Welcome back to Atlanta Diaries. I'm your host, Enma Popley. Thank you for joining me. In Atlanta Diaries, we celebrate unique and inspiring stories of breakthrough women to help future generations create their own. If you want to know more about Atlanta or listen to more episodes, you can visit my website www.enmapopley.com. You can also share feedback or suggestions there. My guest today is Annette Philip. Annette is a multi-award winning musician, educator, and arts entrepreneur. She's a Grammy-nominated producer and an Emmy-nominated TV personality. Annette is the founder and artistic director of the Berklee Indian Ensemble, a viral phenomena with over 300 million views. In 2023, the ensemble's debut album Shuruaat was nominated for a Grammy for Best Global Music Album. Besides performances with several legends, including Rahman, Whelan, Nona Hendryx, and Zakir Hussain, Annette has spent over a decade touring the globe with internationally acclaimed vocal quartet Women of the World, singing in 37 languages and counting. In all that she does, including a songwriting duo Tigs and Nettles, Annette's message of self-love, dreaming big, bold resilience, and kindness are the foundation. And it helped me also recognize my blind spots and understand that creativity is limitless and free from stereotypes. Without further ado, I'm so excited to share with you Annette's inspiring journey in the world of music and creativity. Hi, Annette. A very warm welcome to Atlanta Diaries.
Thank you, Enma. It's such an honor and pleasure for me to have a conversation with you.
Congratulations for this huge achievement, the Grammy-nominee 2023. I'm very proud of you. This country is very proud of you, and you inspire many people.
Thank you. It's so kind of you. I'm so grateful. And yeah, it's really an honor.
Awesome. You've got such a busy schedule: musician, educator, vocalist. You're a Women of the World, television touring, founder director of the ensemble. Keeping it light, I mean, the list is just never ending. But I did send you an invite for Atlanta Diaries. I truly believe that I want to inspire the young girl sitting in a Kerala or a Chandigarh or any small city even in the US and give her the permission to dream and aspire. But what resonated with you that you took time out of your busy schedule to have this conversation?
I think I like conversations. You know, you're doing some incredible work and I resonated with that. And yeah, I tried to say yes.
Okay, then I'm going to make the best use of this 1 hour. I am very, very sure I'm going to bring you back in very soon because this 1 hour is just not going to be enough. And given that, you're not from a music family, how then did you follow this path? And when did you see that music was your calling?
So from a very young age, there was a palpable joy that I was feeling in my body itself. And I think it was a no-brainer that I should continue down the path of music and creativity. And it's just the way it must be. I had such a visceral sense of joy when I was either singing or playing music or listening to music or, doing anything which related to music, including dance or anything in that realm. And so I think I've always believed that, you're supposed to enjoy your life. So that was a very easy, I think, answer for me. And as a child, I would just keep doing anything I could within music. So it's continued. I feel like I'm still having a great childhood.
There must have been moments, some turning points when it was really the answer.
Well, I don't think I was looking for an answer. So it was really just, this is delicious. This is tasty. This is enjoyable. So more of that, please. And I think just all sorts of experiences sitting at home and my parents, while, not into music in their careers, they did love music. So there would be music playing in the house. And also a story which I've shared many times before. We were living in Singapore for a few years in my childhood. And in the evenings, my mother would allow me to watch, maybe some cartoons after I'd finished my homework for the day. While she was flipping through channels, I would insist she stopped at one particular program, and it was a master class. Turned out it was Luciano Pavarotti. And I think more than Master Pavarotti, I was very enamored by the pianist. And so I would, play air piano on all the flat surfaces and the walls in the house. And my parents didn't know much about that instrument, but they took heed. They observed my growing passion for playing air piano. And so they looked for piano lessons. And I think that was a huge turning point. And so I have huge gratitude to my mom and dad for noticing that. And I continued with piano, and I still do to this day. And it's a beautiful part of my journey, and I still have so much to learn.
I can see that visual, you playing piano just anywhere and everywhere, like, with that spring in your step. And I so agree with you that parents can really notice it or ignore it. Given the kind of culture you're from, I'm not stereotyping, but I know education and intellect is really, really important. So do you think they were trying to push you to just build an extracurricular, or was it going to be a career?
No, I don't think anyone can know, at almost any stage. I mean, even in your 40s, you don't know what's coming at you, which is going to change your life and take you in a different direction. So I think they just saw the passion and the joy that was very much visible and palpable, and leaned into it because I was already both feet in it, even with no knowledge of the instrument or of the craft. And of course, as I grew up, there were conversations about, well, you have to do, well in your studies, and you gotta make sure that, all those things are taken care of. I remember when we returned to India, and I was probably in between the 6th and the 8th grade, my school teachers would say, oh, it's interesting, these things are actually extracurricular activities, but you tend to treat them as co-curricular. And that's okay, as long as, and for them and for my parents, I think it was important for me to keep my academic grades up. And for me, I enjoyed both. So, it wasn't like it was a stressful thing necessarily. I just kind of dove into all those subjects, whether it's math or science or Sanskrit. So it was fun and it was interesting. And I think I was being kept alive by the fact that I was doing music so much. And so, yeah, definitely co-curricular, but not really ever thinking that this is the career from my parents' side. I think for me, it was clear, like, of course, I'm going to do something in the arts. So, yeah.
Awesome. So I saw that you've done your bachelor's in journalism. Okay. I saw even accounting somewhere. At one end, I feel I can see that perfect blend because creative people are normally not that structured. So talk to me about all these things. Were they intentional?
So I disagree that creative people are not structured. And I also would encourage everyone to remember that everyone is creative. Whether you're a gardener or you're a chef or you are an accountant or you're a teacher of any subject, or you're a dancer in the, traditional sense of, okay, this is a creative person. Really, actually, everyone is creative. They're always doing things. All of us as human beings, we are constantly improvising. We're constantly adapting to things. So I think that distinction itself is really important because lots of people are afraid to call themselves creative or creators, and they really are. And secondly, probably there's a lot of movies and books and also people who say that, oh, I'm very erratic and I have all sorts of things. But that's also a type of structure. Erraticism is a modality of structure, in my opinion. So to come back to your very specific question about accounting and journalism and all that. So I did commerce stream when I was in India doing high school. And I always loved math, and math and music go together extremely well. And it's, it's very synergistic. There's a lot of analysis in music and in art creation. And then when I was growing up, I did not have a clear idea of, well, if I'm going to do music full time, then, what is it that one studies at the college level? And I was predominantly into Western music and choral music, that kind of stuff. And we were in New Delhi at that time, and there wasn't an option. But I had also gotten introduced to the world of advertising, and I'd been invited to come in and do some jingles and things like that. And it was a really exciting world that I had not, known about before. And, I'm 16, 17, and I'm realizing, wow, this is a gorgeous field to be very creative. And, it also includes writing. I loved literature. I loved language. And so I thought, okay, maybe I can get into advertising. And at that time, the format or the pathway, I should say, was, either do literature or something related to writing, maybe English honors, something like that in Delhi University. And so I had seen that there was a journalism course, and I was already doing voiceovers for Discovery Channel and several other organizations in the city. So it felt like, oh yeah, that could be a interesting way. And, I can still do music, and advertising has so much music that's integral to the field. So it just made a lot of sense. And I had also heard about Lady Shri Ram, LSR, the college that I ultimately went to. And there was a very, very vibrant arts scene at the college, and it appealed to me. So, it all just aligned in a beautiful way. So that's really how those two things happened. And I think doing accounting, having a background, in economics or business studies or math was really useful as I started to do entrepreneurial things. And in the very early stages of exploring arts entrepreneurialism, even before I knew there was a term for what it was that I was doing, it was great. I was definitely drawing upon my journalism skills, my, media management skills, my business acumen, which was coming through some of the high school commerce stream things, because you have to do taxes and you have to get licensing done and you have to know how to make a balance sheet and you have to understand how much funding you have to raise and make something economically viable if you're going to go out and do entrepreneurial things. So it was all connected and all really useful. And, I still bank on all of those skill sets in the work that I do and in the projects that I undertake today.
You've given us such a great perspective and given people the permission to say that they're all creative. So this is absolutely great and opened my mind too. Thank you, Annette. Annette, if I had to say, can you give the listeners a little introduction about yourself? I think that is going to be super helpful to segue to the next set of questions.
Okay. So I am a musician, an educator, an arts entrepreneur, and really an improviser. I am born to a family from Kerala with roots in Kerala and grew up partly in New Delhi, partly in Singapore, and then eventually moved to Boston. Now I live in New York. And I think at the core of everything I do is community building, community creation through the arts, through open communication, and just encouraging people to, dig deeper or lean forward into their creative instincts and their ability to be expressive with vulnerability and with as much openness as they can muster in the current moment. And I absolutely love exploring, traveling the world, learning new things, and delving into every kind of art form, whether it's cooking or textiles or visual art or dance forms. But I like to be creative on a day-to-day basis. So that's me in a nutshell.
That's beautiful. And if I had to sort of dig deep into just a couple of things, I'm intrigued by your role as an art entrepreneur. So tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll take it forward from there.
Sure. So from the beginning, I think one of the skills that I had was to enter a scene and then observe what was working and what was missing, and to identify a future vision. Or what if XYZ existed? For instance, in New Delhi, when I was growing up, both in high school and in college, both of my educational institutions that I was part of were very, very strong within the arts. And there was a lot of collaboration going on, a lot of creative work, a lot of innovation, and a lot of, again, forward momentum with group work within the arts. And the only spaces that we were able to meet other young musicians or dancers or actors were at inter-college or inter-school competitive events. And I noticed this pattern that there was a lot of hostility when we would meet someone from so-called a rival group or ensemble or college or school. And it just didn't sit right with me, because I've always felt that art making is very collaborative, and there's so much that you can do when you're adding your flavors to the mix and you're able to absorb other people's influences and perspectives. It just didn't make any sense for me that there was all this competitiveness and really awkward energy, kind of a toxic environment where it was all about, beating somebody else rather than, using it as an opportunity to challenge yourself and learn something from, whoever you're meeting in those scenarios. And so right after graduating from college, I was sitting with a group of friends and I said, what if we could change that? What if we could create a platform where people from all these different colleges and schools, who had this like-minded passion for the arts and specifically for music, could come together, and it was really high quality art that we were creating, but it was not a competitive environment. It was a very collaborative, very nurturing and nourishing environment. And we started it as a social experiment in 2003. We had about 35 people from LSR, current students, alumni, etc. And then I had been doing a lot of musical theater in New Delhi. And so I knew another circle of like-minded people. And it was a very rainy day in July in 2003. I called my school. I said, can we use a space in the primary school block? And I want to do this. And I don't know how many people are going to show up, but I want to try something and we'll see how it goes. And so the first day, 60 people showed up, and so much rain, but people still, came in right on time. We taught everyone a song, and we had divided the group into different voice parts. So soprano, alto, tenor, bass, all the different vocal parts. And we taught them a gospel piece. And we came together after an hour and we said, okay, let's try the first minute of the song. And even now I get goosebumps. And it was just this powerful moment. And, we sang the first minute of the song and everyone looked around kind of speechless, because it was so, I don't know, it was moving, it was powerful, it was exciting, exhilarating. It was clear that there was something very potent in the room with these 60 people, many of whom were strangers, many of whom had just met an hour ago. And yet there was just this energy that was indescribable, and you just couldn't kind of bottle it up. It was just something that was, there was a vibe. And we said, shall we meet tomorrow? Everyone was like, hell yeah. This felt good, not to do it again. And then tomorrow became, 2 weeks of just doing that. And we had learned, I think, 14 or 15 songs in the first 15 days. And then it was clear, well, we need to do something with all this learning that we've done together. So let's call this group something. And so we called it Artists Unlimited. And we said, well, let's do a show. If we're doing all this music, we might as well do a concert and, build towards something and have a goal. So we said, okay, 2 months later, can we find a venue? And I had done a lot of performances in Kamani Auditorium in New Delhi. And I knew the space and I was comfortable with it as a performance venue. And so we found out, what does it cost? And what does it take? So, we were educated piecemeal. Well, you need to get a police license and a traffic license and an electricity license and insurance. And if you're doing tickets, then you have to do entertainment tax and you have to, get all those ducks in a row. And we said, okay, we don't know anything about this, but we're going to do it. I didn't know that was us being entrepreneurial or anything. And we said, oh, let's create a brochure and let's ask family and friends and nearby commercial organizations if they want to put ads in this. And we sold out, every show, and we broke even the first time itself. And then that group kept growing. And so, I think that similar skill, which is look at what's missing, look at what's working, look at what could be introduced to create a different tomorrow, has been something that's been integral to everything that I've done, whether it's in India or at Berklee as a founder of the Berklee Indian Ensemble, or new things that I'm doing now. There's a vision for the future that might be extremely different or ever so slightly different than what the status quo is. And having the excitement first and the joy of bringing that vision to life is what spurs everything on. And I feel like there have been two questions, and those two questions are what if and why not? And those two really have been at the foundation of every creative and every entrepreneurial project that I've been part of so far.
That's a very, very beautiful story. And, I could sort of listen into that passion. And actually, the word which came to my mind was inspiring. While everybody thinks of ideas, everybody envisions ideas, but I think somebody who can carry so many people together and bring them together, to me, is also the magic, right? Because like you said, there are so many naysayers, who are going to say, are you crazy? Like, this is impossible. And there are some like an Annette who will say, of course it's possible, and let's see how to do this. So I can see some parallels, and I want to share the story since you talked about Atlanta Diaries in the beginning, Annette. I was as impulsive as what you said right now. I'm always itching to do something or the other. And 8 months back, when I was complaining to my husband saying, okay, I think I want to build more impact. I know I'm helping a lot of women leaders transition in larger roles, but I don't think it's enough. And he just, I am sure, very frivolously said, it was his way of, sending me away because he's my go-to person for complaining and everything else. He's like, start a podcast. I'm like, what do you mean? Just go meet women leaders. That's what you want to do. I'm like, okay, let's do it. I said, let's do it, Annette, but I didn't know what I was signing up for. And I feel very grateful that 7 months down the line, we've completed 23 episodes. So it was not what if, it was more like, okay, let's do it and let's see how to do it, So yeah, I could relate to you, from maybe one entrepreneur to the other. And that's why I was curious to know how entrepreneurship can even come in art. And you really opened my mind to see that creative perspective and everything.
It's amazing that you're doing this.
Thank you again. And the other thing which I'd love to talk about is, this whole concept of creating communities. Love to talk about Shuruaat and how you got so many people from so many countries together. What is that secret sauce which has enabled you to do this?
I think at the heart of community building or community creation is the knowledge that we can't do it on our own and we don't have to do it on our own. And I say it meaning anything, whether it's your personal business that you're starting or even your personal mental health journey. You don't have to do it on your own. You really can invite people into your life and into your dreams. And you're always going to learn when you involve other people. And everything that you co-create is just going to be so much richer because of the shared experiences that all your collaborators are going to bring into the mix with you. And so, also this notion that there are a lot of people who are very lonely. We do live in a somewhat isolated society, and more so during the pandemic, it was extremely isolating for a lot of people for different kinds of reasons. Some self-inflicted, some just due to circumstance, some because of actual loss. And so I think, again, right from childhood, I was an only child, but I had this feeling of, everyone, let's do it together. And I don't know where that's necessarily coming from. We didn't have a large family. We were very much a nuclear family, especially living in Singapore at the time. So it wasn't like I grew up with, 16 cousins over every weekend or something. But from somewhere, and who knows, where these things are downloaded from. But it was always we do it together. And so I think I've also been very cognizant that loneliness that I sense in people, that they need someone who thinks like them or thinks diametrically opposite to them, but still accepts them. And again, making art is a vulnerable thing. And so that's a space where you really can be yourself. You're encouraged to be yourself. Being yourself is the best gift you can bring to art creation, because nobody will think of an idea the way you do. No one will execute it the way you do. No one will conjure it up and envision it the way you do. They can't, because you are so unique in your own way. So I think that too has been a big part of it, like wanting to create safe spaces, wanting to create opportunities and platforms where people can feel a sense of belonging and stay, because they not only feel like they've found friendship or fellowship or family or acceptance or companionship, but they're also feeling like they're able to impact the future of the organization, and they're able to grow and help everyone else also grow. And is it difficult? Yeah, it's like nothing's easy. It's like a relationship, even a two-person relationship needs work and time and attention and adjustment and honesty and mistakes and owning up to all of that. And it's the similar way with the group. Like, we're constantly messing up, and then we're constantly trying to reset and restart and just get better. So I think those two things would be at the core of it all. Yeah. And it's funny because I don't consider myself an extrovert. I think I'm an ambivert. I need a lot of alone time. I need a lot of time in isolation for regeneration. And at the same time, there's something amazing when things are created in a collective. There's a momentum that is hard to create on your own.
This is so lovely. I want to shift gears a little bit. Talk a little bit about Annette as a leader. Looks like, obviously, you've put this whole ensemble together, and looks like you've been very intentional about building that community and ensuring vulnerability in that community and, learning in the community. So talk to me about how your leadership style evolved. Maybe some stories on how you ensured that people brought in vulnerability. Did you look for people who are going to be vulnerable, or how did you bring that whole team together?
So the first part of it, Annette is a leader, is a work in progress, makes a lot of mistakes and has a lot of self-doubt, but also I think I just try to have fun, and I'm getting better at not beating myself up as much as I think I used to. And I'm also getting better at relinquishing control. I grew up in a family where my friends used to say, my mom, my dad, and myself, control freak number 1, 2, and 3. And I think that especially over the last year, I've been really consciously working on relinquishing control. And there's a difference between just delegation and relinquishing control. And so, it's been a very interesting journey. And actually, we can use the Shuruaat album as a good example. The Berklee Indian Ensemble was a dream of mine when I joined as a young faculty member at Berklee. And I didn't know at the time that I was the first Indian musician to be invited to join faculty at the college. And I got one of the biggest gifts, which was a blank canvas. And they said, given that you're the first Indian, is there something that you'd like to introduce that would expand the community and also expand our offerings as an institution? I had recently graduated from Berklee, and I knew that there was a lot of interest in South Asian music and specifically Indian music, but there was no performing collective that was exploring Indian music in all its forms. And so I proposed that we start an ensemble that would be open to musicians from any background, and where the ideal was to create an artistically porous space. So where, of course, we are studying Indian music, South Asian music, whether it's classical or folk or contemporary or film related or jazz, Indo-jazz related, or original avant-garde music. Within Indian music, in the idiom and the vocabulary of Indian music, we must be allowing people to bring their cultural influences into this art that is co-created. And, it started out in 2011. And when we got to the 10-year mark, we were already at 300 million views for the content that we were creating. In fact, statistically, this one entity at Berklee makes up 70% of all of Berklee's YouTube views, which has propelled Berklee's YouTube channel to be the number one viewed academic channel in the world. And, even 46% of the subscriber base to Berklee's YouTube are geographically in India. And students, not just from India, but from many different parts of the world, wanting to be part of this fraternity. We were doing artist residencies and continue to do so with some of our greatest living legends from India, from A.R. Rahman to, Ustad Zakir Hussain and Shreyas Ghoshal, Shankar Mahadevan, Indian Ocean. And so, I think Indian students or South Asian students really were seeing the value of these once-in-a-lifetime experiences that not just the ensemble, but the institute that grew out of the ensemble, which we named Berklee India Exchange, was bringing to the table. And when we got to that 10-year mark, the 10-year anniversary, I proposed a new vision for not only the institute, but also the ensemble. And just to give some context, the institute does multiple things. We have an education wing, an innovation wing, and a community wing. We do workshops around the world, online education, scholarships, internships, other types of jobs, both on and off campus, student counseling, parent counseling, all sorts of things. And I felt that for the Indian ensemble, we need to finally do the work and release a debut album. And we decided to title the album Shuruaat, which means beginning. And for us, it really is a new beginning to create a equitable, prorated revenue share model for the proceeds of this album, given the fact that, a lot of these songs were recorded over a period of, say, 4 or 5 years. And at the time of recording, the intent was only experiential learning. But at the time of releasing of the album, the intent was to promote it as a commercial product. And therefore, our agreements and our duty, obligation towards the participants had shifted. And so how are we going to deal with that in a responsible, equitable, professional, respectful way? We signed contracts with all 98 of the musicians who were part of the project. And then again, the what if and why not aspect came into it. I had been saying for a long time, just saying that, we have Grammy aspirations, and a lot of times when I feel inspiration about something, I'll just vocalize it. So for instance, we're going to do a stadium show. It just came out one day without really, thinking about it for years on end. We were at a show in Brooklyn and I said, we're going to do a stadium show. And the group looked at me and I said, yeah, I guess we're going to do a stadium show. Again, why not? When you asked about leadership, I think one thing that, again, I've been very fortunate to have is I am not afraid of trying something new. It doesn't matter to me whether it's precedent or not. If I believe in something, then I'll find a way. It's as simple as that. It's not, can it be done? It's just, how do we do it? And, there's always a way to do things. And again, you may modify the plan, and we did have to modify the internal elements of the album several times due to legal reasons or due to copyright reasons, whatever. But the core idea of having an album that celebrated the first 10 years of the ensemble and that also gave audiences a glimpse into the future of the ensemble and also allowed us to launch the Berklee Indian Ensemble as a professional touring entity separate from any of our academic offerings was all achieved with that one album. And we didn't know anything about the Grammys, but we went by instinct. We had conversations with friends and mentors, and we just created a strategy to, promote the album as best we could. And then we received the Grammy nomination, and it was the first Grammy nomination at Berklee. It's the first professional touring entity. It's the first major record label signing with Sony Music India. It's the first time an equitable revenue share model has been created at the college. It's the first time we are monetizing music digitally through this project. Yeah, and it's, I think, one of the first projects in the world that has these many musicians or creative people, 98 musicians from 39 countries, not counting, the almost 100 extra people who were involved behind the scenes. And so, yeah, it's been a very interesting journey. And I personally made a lot of mistakes, a lot of mistakes. I went through a period of real low when I realized, oh my goodness, I should have done this differently, that differently. I should have been more efficient on this particular process. I should have involved XYZ more in that particular process. And there's so much learning that goes on because you don't have a path. You're making it up as you go. And so I think the thing that I've worked on the most this year is forgiveness of myself. And, just reminding myself, you're human. You are going to get overwhelmed. You're going to make mistakes. When you're working with these many people, somebody might get offended. And, where's the line between owning up and making a shift in the next process versus staying in a grief mode for months and months because you're not able to get over a mistake that was made, but then realizing, oh, well, it's my ego that's not allowing me to forgive myself because, my ego is probably thinking I'm better than this. I should not make any of these mistakes, but that's where my ego is at fault, and it's just chatter and I am going to make mistakes. And I think that's it. So yeah, this was a very, very long, drawn kind of immersion into that question. But I think, it's a lifelong journey of learning. And the most you learn is from others. The most you learn is from your team. And the team we have is one of the best. I think almost everyone on our team went through the class at one point. And so, there's a culture within Berklee India Exchange and the Berklee Indian Ensemble and everything that we do, which is of care and, as much as we can to do things with intention and integrity at the core. And of course we waver, but yeah, it's a great team and a team that teaches me so much.
It's a long drawn answer, but the answer has showcased all your vulnerability, Annette. So thank you for that. You spoke about culture of care. How did you make that happen? While it's a set of musicians, but it's also an organization, right? So there are people spending time day in and day out. So how are you bringing these 98 people together?
So I need to clarify some things. So the 98 musicians were part of the Shuruaat album project, but in the Berklee Indian Ensemble, we've had about 500 musicians from 52 countries be part of it the last 10 years. And that's not counting, the thousands of people that we interact with and engage with and work with in the workshops and the other settings. So this is really a large-scale global enterprise. But to talk about the culture of BIX, I think right from the beginning, let's keep in mind that it started as a class, as an academic offering, and then evolved in multiple entities under the umbrella of the VIX empire, so to speak. And so, since it began as a class, we used to have tradition of, meeting many, many more times than the regular class times, which might be 2 hours or 4 hours in a week or 6 hours, depending on how many classes you were attending. And, whenever we rehearse, it used to be that everyone would bring in some food. So we would have potluck and we would, spend time getting to know each other outside of the teaching process, arranging or composing or rehearsing process. I remember we were inviting Shankar Mahadevan to come in for a residency, and one of the Israeli students had volunteered to rearrange, which is something we do a lot with our music, rearrange the iconic youth anthem, Dil Chahta Hai. And as Indians, we've all watched the movie, we know the song. And he came in with an arrangement and it was amazing. But for me, it was apparent that if he had watched the movie, he might approach it differently. And so we said, okay, well, this weekend, in 2 days, let's all bring food and we're going to watch this movie together. And specifically, I want you to watch the movie and I want you to see how that impacts, the writing process. And so everyone sat and we enjoyed it and it was amazing. And, so there's all this time that is spent, that is invested in getting to know each other outside of the strict rehearsal or performance or preparation mode. And the fact that now we have 11 members on the team, for a long time it was 1 and then it was 2, 3, 3.5. And then, only over the last 2 years it's grown. And now we have 11 people on the team, including our student employees. And 10 out of those 11, I should exclude myself. So 9 out of those 11 were actually in the class. And so they've grown up seeing this and experiencing it and impacting it themselves by, being themselves and contributing to the way things are done. And so, yeah, that family orientation, I think, is a big part of the culture. And one very interesting story was a few years ago, there was a student who came in. And on the first day of class, when I used to teach, I no longer teach the class. It's now called the South Asian Ensemble. That's another chapter. One of the very beautiful stories that came out, which struck me as so interesting and so vital, was when we were sitting in a circle on the first day of class. And I asked everyone to share one thing they want to contribute and one thing they'd like to learn or take away from their time that semester. One of the students whose first day it was said, well, of course I want to grow musically, but the main thing is every time I watch the Berklee Indian Ensemble videos, you all look like you're having so much fun and that you like each other. And it's my 3rd semester in the college and I don't really have any friends. So I hope I'll find some friends here. And it was so interesting for me to hear that because, when you're in the center of it or up close to something, you don't necessarily see the ripple effect that is happening. And fast forward to last year when we had the Grammy nomination Zoom call, to hear the results. And that person was online. And right after the meeting, we were all celebrating. And he said, I don't know if you remember, but many years ago when I was there on my first day, I said something. I don't know if you remember. And I said, no, I remember very well. He said, I just want to tell you that I really found what I was looking for in this group. And I'm very glad. And I'm glad too, me. So it's been really good. And I think the culture continues to evolve. With every passing year, something changes, but we try as much as we can to keep coming back to those ideals. And especially as it grows fast, we're growing exponentially right now. Yeah, we need to actually do retreats and take time and reset and realize, okay, are we straying? Are we on track? Are we lacking? What do we have to do? So it's active work.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. And, this is only one part of what you're doing. And then there is the other initiative which you've started. I love that podcast, Keeping It Live. Okay. And then, of course, the previous show, Sing That Thing. So, how did those come about? Like, what sort of inspires you to do this and more? Tell me what keeps you going.
What keeps me going is curiosity, and again, you see what's missing, how can I serve, and also what's exciting, what's fun. And I think it's important to clarify that I'm not doing everything all the time. So keeping it like that. We did 100 episodes during the pandemic, early on in the pandemic, for the first 6 months of the pandemic. And it's something that I hope to return to, but other things have been happening. And Sing That Thing was a beautiful thing with PBS, and it was a community choral contest, but again, very loving, a beautiful, kind environment of encouraging people. And I didn't start that. I was invited to be a judge on that particular show, and it was exciting. And I think we did 5 or 6 seasons of it, and who knows if it'll continue. But I think with all the new endeavors, there's a spark, and there's some excitement, there's some joy, and often there is service, and service is not always external. Service is also internal, which is something I've had to learn and train myself on. So yeah, that's it. That's how a lot of these things have started, and some survive and some go dormant, and then they come back up when the time is right.
How do you bring that balance? How do you bring that, what you call now, harmony? So help the listeners understand that, because I absolutely love that perspective.
So yeah, struggled a long time, and I still struggle with it. When people talk about work-life balance, and then I heard about the phrase work-life harmony, which was better, because I think that harmony, also coming from music, implies that there are many different aspects that can come together, and there's synergy formed, but it doesn't need to feel or imply equal parts of everything. And right now, the thing that's working for me is the word Zen mode. It's just something that I've been mulling over, and I realized only after moving to New York, which it's been about a year that I've been living here, that the harmony thing was also not exactly the right thing for me anymore, because I think I had been neglecting some very important areas of growth for myself. And I realized that as I'm growing older, there are some things that are now a necessity for me that weren't earlier, like sleep. I could work 23 hours, 36 hours, no sleep. I could just do it. And I think nowadays I find that I don't function that well when I'm, doing these all-nighters and things like that. And so now my new framework is Zen mode. That's the word that works best for me. It's got nothing to do with the practice of Zen, so to speak, but it's just there are certain things that I do now for health, like drinking water, sleep, a certain amount of downtime of, not doing anything, time for nothing, time for meditation, reflection, and certain goals that I have for myself personally. Okay, well, let me do, even 5 minutes of this on a daily basis. And as long as that is happening, that feels more like I'm in Zen mode, my own definition of Zen mode. And it's interesting. Things are not progressing on the work. I mean, everything is really the same. I don't really think of it as so much as separate from, my personal things. But yeah, I have noticed that the more I'm taking care of myself, the slower some things are growing. However, they are growing healthily. So I'm okay with the pace being slower. And that's me of today. Me of 6 months ago was more distraught by the pace being slower than I'm used to it being, for something to progress, for something to gain momentum and be executed.
I appreciate that. And there's another thing I heard a lot in your entire conversation. I heard a lot of mentoring. So, who has been your go to person, or who were the mentors in your journey who sort of help you to evolve? And because I can hear a lot about growth and work in progress.
So my parents, for sure, I'm very close to them, but also over the last few years, I've been actively seeking teachers, mentors, advisors, guides, especially in areas that I feel like I'm lacking or I'm stagnant. So, for instance, I do have a physical trainer now, a fitness coach, and I think it's really important for me. And I feel accountable to this person, and they're just the right combination of tough and firm, and also believe that I'm stronger than I think I am. So that's really great. But also people that I've met, it could be leaders at Berklee, it could be other music teachers of mine, therapists. I think it's so important for people who are leaders to also have space and safety to talk about what they're struggling with. You can't always talk with your colleagues, though I will say that I'm very blessed to have colleagues in all of my creative endeavors where I feel safe enough. It's not a hierarchy thing at all. And I try to kind of lead in a flat way rather than a top-down kind of hierarchy. And I will often ask for advice from my teammates because they're seeing the same things that I see, but maybe in a different way. And I know that everyone has blind spots. And then the other thing is books. Books are really powerful. And sometimes there'll be a book that comes into your life at just the right time for that phase, for whatever it is you're going through. And even movies, podcasts, all sorts of things, like you're learning all the time from people. And especially now more than ever, I think in the last 2 years, I have a number of people that I consult on a number of different subjects. And I've also realized that you do need to try to work with many different types of mentors and coaches and guides to find what suits you. And there are phases where your work with a particular coach will organically come to an end. You've gone as far as you can with them, and then it's time for you to work with someone else. So again, it's a big evolution process. And I think just the way I said that we're all creators, I also think we're all leaders. We're all leading our own lives. So you're a leader, whether you think you are or not. And only you know where you're stuck. And the best thing is to ask for help.
I do want to talk about your duo with your partner, Stephen. It's a different dynamic, and it's a beautiful homage, but I also found the name very interesting, Tigs and Nettles. What inspired this name, and tell us a little bit more about this?
So Stephen is another one of my mentors in so many ways. He's such a masterful, wise person and gives incredible counsel, but also calls a spade, not afraid to just say things straight up. And during the pandemic, obviously everyone was in isolation and lockdown. And so we got a lot more time together and we started writing. And in fact, the first song that we released was just a chorus that I had come up with on a day that I was very kind of down, low energy. And I had to do a photo shoot with my a cappella quartet, Women of the World. And I just didn't even feel like smiling that day. And I went to take a shower. And in the shower, I thought, oh, amazing, amazing. We're going to have an amazing time. So I just started saying this to myself. What if it just turns out amazing? And then I had this melody that came to mind. And during the pandemic, I played that little recording of 20 seconds to Stephen and said, what do you think? And he said, oh, I love this. Let me write some stuff around it. And he's an amazing musician himself and, also writes fantastic lyrics and basically fleshed out the rest of the song. And then we tried it together and it was so much fun. And we thought, oh, we should call this duo or something. And, since my name is Annette, he will often call me Net or Nettles. And that's kind of like one of my many pet names in the house with Stephen. And he is a teddy bear and kind of like a big cat. So I used to always call him Tigger. And from Tigger came Tiggs. So that's the name.
Wow, I would have never ever imagined something like this.
So Tigger Meadows, and Stephen is multi-instrumentalist, producer, turntablist, executive director of Berklee NYC, strategist, consultant, Emmy-winning producer. Like, he's just done so much and lived multiple lives, often I say. And so, and same with me, it's just been, we do a lot of big projects and very deep immersive work. And so for us to have a creative outlet that's very lighthearted and just simple in its setup and, joyful and funny and silly and random is really, really important for us. So that's our duo. And we have a few songs out now on YouTube and Spotify. And, hopefully we'll release more music this and next year.
I loved it. I listened to your Keeping It Light, that surprise at the 100th episode, and it was just so lovely. And that's why I was like, I have to ask Anand this question about pigs and nettles.
Yeah, he's amazing, and I'm so grateful to have a loving and, again, wise, truly wise partner. And he keeps it light. He really knows how to keep it light. And often when I'm kind of like, stressed out, he'll say, oh yeah, and he'll just make a joke about something totally not related. And then that immediately shifts me out of my self-obsessed, moment of frustration. And I realize, you're right. I can keep it light. I can be chill about this.
Awesome. Beautiful partnership is the best thing we can have to keep ourselves going, especially when we want to do so many things at the same time, right? Shifting gears a little bit, given that you've sort of, navigated so many different cultures across geographies and within the same geography, did you ever face any conscious or unconscious bias?
Well, I think, in my earlier years of entrepreneurialism, I don't know who and what I was trying to prove things to, but I'm very grateful that I have and continuing to grow out of notion that I have to do everything myself. And so that was definitely something that has changed and evolved. And who knows where that was coming from, that feeling that you have to do everything yourself and you have to do it perfectly, do it well, do it with intention, do things with integrity, be responsible. All those things are fine, but there's a point at which, whether it's a creative project or whether it's a, whatever, that it goes beyond being done to just, beating the heck out of it just to make it perfect. And what is perfection anyway? It's just an unachievable, unattainable thing. Every time you do something, you can always make it better. I don't think there's anything on the planet that is absolutely perfect. So it's an illusion. And I think getting rid of that obsession is really good. And I think that's been helping lately. Funny thing happened. I was called to do a song for Godzilla, which was recently released as an animation film by some of these amazing Japanese producers. And I'd sent them a quick demo. I didn't have time that day, so I just recorded it at home. And, it was more to see if it would match the vibe. And they loved it. And they said, oh, yeah, this is perfect. And okay, so here are the 3 songs, blah, blah, blah. And they sent me the final tracks. And I, spent days working on it. And I perfected every single thing. And then the producer came back and said, the filmmakers really liked your first version. That was the demo. That wasn't even recorded in a studio. I literally held a microphone in my hand. I just did something, I just did it to finish it because there was a deadline and I just sent it. It's really bad. And they were like, no, it's perfect for the story. And they released the demo version. And, that has gotten so much traction on Spotify and YouTube. And, I was in shock. And even now I cringe when people listen to it because for me, it was the worst performance, because it was literally done as an example of what could be done. And it really taught me that, get over yourself. Get over yourself. Get out of your own way. Finish things. Move on. And a lot of times that's where the magic is. So yeah, doing things myself, trying for perfection. Those are two things that I really had to learn and get rid of, and I'm still working on it.
This has been so, so great, Annette. And thank you again for bringing your authentic self to this conversation and sharing all your little nuggets and so many perspectives. Since Atlanta Diaries is a place where aspiring women leaders learn and unlearn their definitions of success, would love your parting thoughts for these leaders as they transition into larger roles.
I think ask for help, especially when you're transitioning into a larger role. Do some self reflection, figure out what you feel you're good at and what you feel you need help on, and then ask for help. You don't have to do it alone. You're not expected to know everything. Nobody knows everything. So I think ask for help, be really upfront about things that you are not great at. And I think be willing to grow. And that's it. You don't need anything else other than an open heart, an open mind, and the ability to take feedback and take lessons from literally anyone. And follow your joy. Make sure that you're still feeling joy from whatever it is that you're doing. Bigger is not always better. And that's a third thing, if I add to the previous question, bigger is not always better. And I think a lot of my time, I love big ideas. And sometimes starting small is better, but not always. If I was only thinking small from the beginning, I don't think I would be where I am today. But I think there's a time and place for big, and there's a time and place for pilots, and there's a time and place for reckless abandon, and there's a time and place for conservatism. So only you know, and ask for help. You'll get where you want to be much faster.
That's so beautiful. And that's just such a perfect way of ending this conversation. Thank you very much, Annette. And I wish you all the very best. And I'm sure I'm going to meet a Grammy Award winner very, very soon. And I look forward to that day.
Thank you, Enma. Lovely to speak with you and to have this time of sharing. And I look forward to hearing more about your story in our next conversation.
Thank you very much for listening. All my guests have brought their most vulnerable selves on Atlanta Diaries. And even if a small segment of these conversations can help champion the journey of one person, it's going to be really worth it. I do have a request for you. Please share this podcast on your social media and with your family and friends. Our society is constantly evolving, and Atlanta Diaries must too. I really appreciate if you can leave your feedback in the form of a review or a rating. These are impactful and rousing stories that need to be shared far and wide. See you next time for another one on Atlanta Diaries.